Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and we've got a new segment here doing a deck tech on Pauper Elves. Had some people asking in the comments, and decided to go ahead and start out with Elves. It's my nephew James's favorite deck. He's just been getting into Magic, and I figured I'd start out here, really break it down, detail all of the cards for those unfamiliar. So this is the deck list from Coleman Falk, found out on MTG Top 8. A great resource for those unfamiliar. This is the sideboard, and let's jump in. So on the first turn, you're going to be looking for some type of acceleration. Llanowar Elves, Fyndhorn Elves, Elvish Mystic. They're all identical in function, only different in name. 1 mana for a 1/1 elf. This is an effect that's been good since Alpha, and it's going to get the ball rolling very effectively to get out in front of all of the other decks. Quirion Ranger combos very well with that, giving you up to 4 mana on the first turn with your Llanowar Elves. So you're going to be able to tap, untap using Quirion Ranger, and then replay a land if you only have 1 land. So off of a single basic forest, you can pull double duty and still end up with an explosive start because of Quirion Ranger. Of course, Quirion Ranger is strong throughout the rest of the game too, has a ton of things it can untap. Priest of Titania, another great card to be untapping. This taps for a green for each elf on the battlefield. That is going to be super powerful in this deck. Every creature is an elf, and untapping it is going to allow you to just play out your entire hand no matter how many extra cards you're drawing. Timberwatch Elf, very aggro thing to be untapping. Typically going to be tapping for a significant bonus, and +X for the total number of elves on the battlefield. Again, it's all elves. This guy can close out the game very quickly. The nice thing also about Quirion Ranger is it gives you a way of avoiding removal. So when you go to pump a creature, instead of them just being able to bolt it in response, you can untap Timberwatch, tap it again to give it the bonus, and essentially you just nullified the removal and both of your pumps went through. So very difficult to play around. Very often they're going to need to try and remove the Timberwatch before removing the rest of your creatures, because he does give just so much protection from all of the burn that populates this format. Wellwisher, speaking of burn, very solid counter there. Has a target on its head for sure. They have to get rid of this, otherwise you're going to get way out of range. Even Delver strategies are going to have a very difficult time pushing through enough damage when you're using Wellwisher, particularly if you're untapping it with that Quirion Ranger. And to round out the life gain, we've got Essence Warden, which is going to allow for kind of incremental growth. Of course, this deck does put a ton of elves on the battlefield, and that can start with Lys Alana Huntmaster. Now, every time you cast an elf spell, you get a 1/1 green elf warrior token, and that can really get out of control very, very quickly. So let's see what we've got next. Up next, we've got a way to get a ton of elves on board. Even in the mid-game, we've got Nettle Sentinel, which doesn't look like much for those unfamiliar. It doesn't untap during its untap step. Whenever you cast a green spell, you can untap it. So it kind of feels like, oh, maybe you kind of give it vigilance, attack, and then untap it. But the reality is this is one of the most powerful effects in the deck because it combos with Birchlore Ranger, which allows you to tap 2 untapped elves you control to get 1 mana of any color. Any color is actually relevant. This deck does have a splash, but very important to be able to just spam a ton of elves. So when you have a Birchlore out and a Nettle Sentinel, when you play a 1 mana elf, the Nettle Sentinel untaps, and then Birchlore Ranger's ability doesn't take into consideration summoning effect the way it might seem to newer players. You're using Birchlore to create the mana. So the 2 elves that you tap is a payment, and you can make it when they have summoning sickness. So you play a Llanowar Elf, you tap your Nettle Sentinel and a Llanowar Elf together, play another Llanowar Elf, the Nettle Sentinel untaps, and you can just keep doing that if you have a fistful of 1/1s for 1 after you've reloaded. So that can create a massive amount of elves very quickly and allow you to reload very effectively. Elvish Vanguard, of course, takes great advantage of that. This is the biggest physical threat in the deck from a single card. Elvish Vanguard can easily become a 20/20 or more just from a massive amount of elves entering the battlefield. Especially with the Lys Alana Huntmaster. All of those extra triggers help the Vanguard because this trigger is enter the battlefield, not a cast trigger. So you're going to run out of cards really quick. We're going to need to reload, and that is where Lead the Stampede comes in. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You're going to get all of the creatures into your hand. Very often you're going to be hitting 5 for 5, typically 3 to 4 cards. The deck is almost entirely creatures, all of them elves, and Lead the Stampede just draws into just straight gas once you've deployed all of your resources. And this is the big bomb in the deck. Distant Melody. This is the card that casual players knew about for a long time. It was not on my radar at all, and man, it is a powerful effect. At 4 mana, you're going to draw a card for each elf you control. Now, I shouldn't say elf because there are times where you're going to need to name something else, but the main effect here is you name elves, you're going to be drawing a massive amount of cards, and then using the elves on board to deploy even more elves. Typically, you're so far ahead, you're actually going to be able to hold back an entire second wave of elves if they do have some type of sweeper effect. So Distant Melody is so powerful that there are times where you need to name something other than elf. So you might name Warrior because of all of the Lys Alana Huntmasters and Nettle Sentinels in the tokens. Maybe Druid, Shaman. I think there's a couple of other here. Let me just check my little spreadsheet here. So there is Scout for Sylvan Ranger. And then, of course, Shaman for the Essence Warden. So any of those will let you draw less cards, but more often than not, it's pedal to the metal. You're going to draw 20, 30 cards. As long as you don't actually deck yourself, you're going to be happy with it, with that Distant Melody. The aforementioned Sylvan Ranger there is the other way to get blue mana. So Birchlore Ranger is going to be your most common way, but the Sylvan Ranger can go get that basic island out of the deck because it does run a singleton island, and then the rest of the mana base is going to be basic forests, and that's going to allow you to untap Quirion Ranger, untap with Quirion Ranger. You're not going to get too fancy playing any type of duels. You really just want nice old-fashioned basic forests to untap everything. Going to take a second to spotlight another card which is not in this deck list, Vines of Vastwood. I have seen a lot of people playing Vines over Distant Melodies. I think Distant Melody is the funner card, but Vines of Vastwood does address a main concern of the deck, and that is targeted removal, just stopping your growth. So Vines can counter that, and it can also give you a finish. So that's a possible card there. The final card in the main deck is a singleton Viridian Longbow, which doesn't look that important, but let me tell you, the best control deck in the format is Urzatron, and they can fog you out infinitely. They've got you skipping your attack step, they've got moments pieces. There are so many games where you're not going to be able to win through combat damage. Those final points are going to be elusive, and Viridian Longbow will give you the ability to do that. Of course, with elves here, you can actually get so many elves on board that you could kill somebody from their full starting life or more. And when Viridian Longbow is on a Nettle Sentinel, you're getting untapped triggers every time that you cast a green spell. So there are a lot of ways for this deck to generate a bunch of untapped triggers, generate a bunch of mana, pass the Viridian Longbow around, and have everybody just take a shot at your opponent's face and find a way to win a game that otherwise combat damage wouldn't be able to win. So really important main deck card. Doesn't look like much, but it completely changes the matchup. So much that I'd say it's probably the most important card when you're playing against Urzatron. So for the sideboard here, no surprise, we've got some more elves. Scattershot Archer, a great way of killing 1/1 flyers, a couple of them working together. Makes it very difficult for Delver decks to win, but versus many of the Fairy Miscreant, Spellstutter, Sprite style decks, Scattershot Archer just really pulls a significant amount of weight. Speaking of Delver, Penumbra Spider matches up very well versus him. 3/2 flyers, got nothing on him. He'll be able to block, even if they do a 2-for-1 and throw a lightning bolt in there as well to clear the first half of them. That token comes back and causes more problems. So very powerful card versus Delver strategies, anything that takes to the air. Moment's Peace, solid combat trick. You're going to be able to have a lot of game versus other aggro decks, but it's nice to be able to completely stop a single attack step, particularly versus the decks that are trying to one-shot you. Spider Silk Armor, another card that's been on casual players' radar for a long time. Gives your creatures reach and +0/+1. So again, versus those decks full of flyers, gives you a ton of game and gives you some assurance versus effects like Electrickery, which could completely clear your board otherwise. Another way of protecting your creatures here, Wrap and Vigor. Regenerate each creature you control. Electrickery is a beating versus this deck, and this is a great answer to that. And, of course, creature combat. You're going to be getting in a bit of that in this format, as so much of the format is aggressive. Luminescent Rain. Very interested to hear your thoughts on this one. You choose a creature type, you gain 2 life for each permanent you control of that type. In a vacuum, seems fantastic versus a deck like Burn. You could gain just a crazy amount of life. To me, it really feels like a win more card. I feel like if you've got all of those elves, I feel like you're probably just winning anyways. I don't know. Let me know what your experience is with that in the comments. It's basically just activating Wellwisher twice for 3 mana. Gleeful Sabotage. This card's literally been played in Vintage before, in Vintage Elves. You can Conspire to double the effect, so you can destroy target artifact or enchantment twice. You're going to have some untapped elves kicking around, and it's a very powerful way to get rid of pesky artifacts and enchantments. And then round it out with Relic of Progenitus. Graveyards are not a huge issue in Pauper compared to other formats, but it is an effect that's worth having a one of. In this one, very low cost. You can always exile it to draw a card and get all of the graveyards. So that's it for this Pauper Elves deck list. I hope you enjoyed the review and found it thorough. Hopefully understand the deck a little bit more and maybe go ahead and give it a try. Very inexpensive to throw together, and it is a lot of fun. Hey, let me know in the comments what deck you'd like to see covered next. Legacy, Vintage, Pauper, wherever you want to see this go. And as always, thanks for watching. That's all for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please help grow the channel by subscribing. You'll be notified when we upload new videos like Fast Effect, Double Speed Magic with commentary, or Untapped, our raw tournament gameplay. Thanks for watching.